Hello. Very big hello. My name's Anne Robinson and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the team at Sheffield Hallam to Community Justice Learning. This short screencast is intended to tell you a little bit about our approach, whether you're starting on distance learning modules or whether you're on the 15-month PQIP, where there's a bit more of a mix of online learning and face-to-face teaching. Whichever route you're taking, this is intended to give you a little bit of a grounding, and before you come to your induction and before you start engaging with all the people around your training, you can have a think about what the involvement of the academic programme is going to be and what it's going to mean for you. And the first thing to say is that Community Justice Learning itself has been around only 3 years. It's the most recent version of the probation officer training. But here at SHU we've been involved since the training separated out from social work about 20 years ago, and we've been delivered various iterations of the training ever since. This one is slightly different in moving much more onto the online environment, and we've taken that as a real challenge, and we've been keen to explore what we can do with that environment. So we don't necessarily have a lot of face-to-face contact with learners. We do, for those on the 15-month programme, have a certain amount, but what we've tried to do is to make sure that we are reaching out to you and we're talking to you as much as possible and engaging with you in different ways through screencasts such as this and through a range of different interactive elements that we build into the teaching. So we're moving our teaching practice on, we're responding to feedback from previous cohorts of learners as well to try to make sure that what we're doing really meets what it is that you need, whether you are really keen to learn about all sorts of aspects of the job or whether you are just much more focused on learning what you need to do to get to the right sort of professional standards. And I think that that aspect of professionalism is very, very important in this. Community Justice Learning sits within a very particular place within SHU, within the Department of Law and Criminology, which is part of a wider Social Sciences Humanities faculty, but it's also embedded within the Helena Kennedy Centre for International Justice. And Helena's patron of the centre, she's also now Chancellor of the University, and you might be aware of her and her very important human rights work, and that's part of the values that she brings and that we ally ourselves to, values that underpin the work that we do on Community Justice Learning, because human rights and social justice are very, very important. So just to talk about what the focus and our emphasis is. I mean, first of all, on the quality of our teaching, because we're really keen that we reach out to you, that we present materials in a way that's accessible, that's very relevant and that's useful for you, and that's very much informed by criminal justice practices. Everybody that you'll meet on Community Justice Learning, all the tutors, are former probation officers, and we all have our particular specialisms within practice. So you'll find amongst the staff team a real range of interests and expertise about how things work within the real world of practice, but also about the possibilities and what research is telling us, all the things about positive practice, strength-based practice, desistance and so on, and the cutting-edge work about interventions with sex offenders and all the other things. So we're kind of exploring those sorts of boundaries, and many of us are research active as well. So what we're doing is trying to bring the most recent knowledge about practice, the most recent knowledge about the workings of the penal system, the most recent knowledge about different types of offending behaviour to bear in our teaching, and we relate it all back to some of the key questions about human rights and social justice, whether we're talking about sex offenders and risk management, whether we're talking about supervisory relationships, whether we're talking about unpaid work, whether we're talking about the use of constraints and controls, or whether we're talking about the rights that offenders have to be part of society, and all the questions about participation, about being part of a community, about reintegration, about being able to get access to jobs and not having huge barriers put up by criminal records and so on when individuals are trying to move on. we recognise that everybody have human rights, and that isn't necessarily privileging the rights of offenders over those of others, but it's seeing them in balance with the rights of victims, with the rights of communities, with the rights of children, and so on. So certainly saying that offenders have done wrong does not necessarily erase their rights at all. And one of the things that we do in all the different aspects of our teaching is to talk about rights and what they mean, because they're part of the tensions and conflicts, part of the things that you need to resolve and accommodate and to be thinking about as you move into your professional role. And that's the difference in a way in terms of taking a professional role and just doing a job where you're doing things in a more straightforward and mechanistic way. It's the way that you're having to weigh up all the different interests of different parties and the relative importance of the different stakeholders and their needs, their vulnerabilities and the risks indeed. So the learning you're going to undertake on the CJL is primarily online, and for some of you in the first instance entirely online. But several points to make about that. We deliver the learning through a visual learning environment, Blackboard, and Blackboard has all sorts of possibilities, and it allows quite a lot of interaction to be built into learning sessions. So you'll see when you get onto the modules and you start looking at how the learning is presented that there are lots of opportunities for talking and interaction, but also things to watch, screencasts like this where your tutors are actually talking to you, and things to read, websites to look at, all sorts of things. So quite a variety there. You have module tutors, so people who are attached to the teaching in each particular module, but overall course leaders and the programme managers available to give advice and support, and an academic tutor for each of you as well. So one particular person who is there dedicated to your learning and able to come out perhaps to meet with you or to meet with groups of learners. So we make the effort to communicate with you. We try to reach out to you, but of course communication is a two-way process. So it's up to you to let us know what's going on, to let us know when you're struggling, to contact us when things aren't going so well, when you're not able to access the materials or you don't understand what's expected of you, because we do try to make our instructions very clear. We do try to make it explicit what the expectations of learning on each module are and what we are wanting to see in each of the module assignments. There's very clear learning outcomes that are spelled out and assessment criteria, so that should help you do whatever is necessary. And we provide screencasts and we provide narrated lectures and all sorts of things to take you through the elements of what it is that we're wanting you to do. But over and above that, you can have individual conversations, and certainly we'd like feedback on how you're finding the course overall as you're going through it, and certainly at the end. Because a lot of this is about relationships, it's about dialogue, it's about you letting us know what it is you need, what you're interested in, and then we are able to respond to that. But also we need to let you know what our agenda is, what we're trying to do, and what we're expecting of you, so you stand the best chance of being able to respond to that. So it's quite a vibrant learning environment. There's quite a lot there, and to some extent you can pick and choose. There are certain core elements that you will need to attend to, some core bits of reading, some core screencast lectures and things like that that you might need to listen to, but then lots of choice over what you can pick up depending on your areas of interest, depending on the time you have available and your capacities, but also what you're planning to do and the choices you make in terms of the assessments that you're doing for each individual module, because there's quite a lot of variety there and quite a lot of options that you can take in how you tackle each of the assessments and the sorts of subjects that you cover in the assessments, so that they meet your interests, but also they meet what you need to know. So you're researching, you're learning for your assessments things that are going to be of value to you in your ongoing career. So just to say some of the philosophy of what we are doing on the CJL and our approach to teaching, we try to make sure that the teaching is active. So we're not just putting lots of things for you to read onto Blackboard, lots of Word documents and lots of links to chapters and things to reading, because there's plenty of that there. So there's some hard academic content to what we're doing. And by hard, I mean kind of proper and challenging and so on, because we do have to have a degree of academic rigour. But there's also lots of other things. So there are tips and hints where you can go and you can find things out for yourself. You can be researching, asking questions. You will have things to reflect upon. So lots of different types of activities, and depending on your learning preferences, you can pick and choose once you've done your core elements. We relate what we're doing to practice and to real-world situations in many instances. So yes, we do need to talk about theory and some abstract concepts, but a lot of this is about how you apply those to the work that you're doing. So you're understanding behaviours, you're understanding the dynamics within teams, you're understanding how organisations work or how multi-agency setups might well have problems or things that you've got to get around in managing the complex set of relationships. So we do try to ensure that what we're doing is very relevant to the sorts of things you're doing. What that means is that we have to ensure that we're very, very up to date in what we're talking about. Up to date, of course, in terms of thinking about the most recent research, but up to date in keeping track of all the changes in a really kind of rapidly shifting penal environment. I mean, lots of things just within the last year in terms of the position of probation services, what's happening with offender management, and all the critical voices that seem to have brought about some sort of possibilities of change within the configurations of probation service to come. So, we really do make sure that we're able to tie things into a real and up-to-date practice context. And we do that in a number of ways because we use different media. So we do use screencasting, we'll use audio tape now and again, so you have some commentaries. We use all sorts of quizzes, Padlets or notice boards where you can post your comments and things like that. So there's lots and lots of different things that we do. But the important thing is clarity about what it is you're expected to achieve at the end. I mean, achieve in terms of what you're expected to learn from the particular sessions within modules and modules overall, and what you're expected to demonstrate in terms of your learning in the assessments. So you should be able to target your learning to an extent. Of course, we want to ensure that you get a good breadth of learning, because we don't want people coming out at the end of their probation training knowing only certain subject areas and certain things. You do need to have a good breadth of knowledge. You do need to know a bit about drugs and about mental health and about safeguarding and about sex offenders and about all sorts of other things. But at the same time, it is really about ensuring that you develop the thinking skills, the skills in analysis and reflection and so on, and that we are making it clear to you as you go through the learning what it is you're expected to achieve and what it is that we're expecting to see. So it's not of rote learning of lots of different subjects. It is about some specific bits of learning and thinking and developing your ideas and your criticality as you go through the modules. So the starting point is going to be different according to the part of the programme that you come on. So some of you have been recruited onto the 21-month extended PQIP, and for you from day one you're starting distance learning modules because you've got your 15-month programme, which is the PQIP proper, if you like. But your first 6 months you're doing distance learning modules, and for most of you that will be 4 modules. And that means you start off with 2, you study them for 3 months, and then you have another 2 from October through to December, handing in shortly before Christmas. And they are preparatory. So they give you the background in criminal justice, in criminological theory, so you're thinking about criminal behaviours. It's learning about the penal system itself, and by penal system I mean particularly prisons, probation, youth justice, and all the things that happen post-sentence. And there's a really specific module about rehabilitation as well, and that talks about some of the approaches to rehabilitation, because there's not just kind of one way of doing it. So those are all distance learning modules. You'll be enrolling on those straight away, and it's really important that you get to grips with them fairly quickly, because you've got to move through them at quite a pace. There's 8 sessions of learning in each of the modules, and a session should take you round about a day with some of the directed reading and so on. And on each of the modules you have reading that's made available to you to supplement the learning materials in the session. And we are very keen to ensure that we're pointing out to you, making it clear which are the bits which are essential bits of reading that are compulsory, if you like, because you need those in order to get the core knowledge from the modules, and then what you can do over and above that, if you're interested, if you want to, if you're pursuing particular subjects for your assessments. So you'll have, from the beginning, you'll be able to enrol, to look at the 2 modules you're starting off with, and you'll be able to see what the assessments are, what the learning sessions are, and so on for those particular modules straight away, and should be able to embark on your learning really, really quickly. And you'll have contact from your academic tutor early doors in order to ensure that you're getting set off on your learning journey really quickly. If you're on the 15-month programme, it doesn't start quite so quickly in an academic sense. I mean, you're plenty, I'm sure, to be getting on with within the workplace, particularly if you're brand new to probation. So you'll start off your academic programme in the 3rd month of your training with one particular module, skills for probation practice, and that is a little bit of a gentle introduction, because the real academic programme doesn't start until a few weeks later, and then it kicks in properly. When you come to the induction, we'll explain how it all works, but the idea is that you get your feet under the table within the workplace, you do some key workplace learning. There's a gentle start to the academic programme. But that should mean you can start some reading. It should mean you can start to familiarise yourself with the nature of online learning, what we're doing, how to access the resources and so on. And the university library and everything's available to you from that point. And you then kick into the learning later on. Some of you are recruited to the 15-month programme, but you've got one particular module to do that's extra, one of the required knowledge modules that you didn't have in your previous degree. And if that's the case, you're starting off on your learning straight away as well. So you're doing your one missing module, and for most of you that's the rehabilitation module. Some of you it'll be practices in the penal system, and 1 or 2 of you a different one entirely. But if you've got one module to do, you'll be starting straight away, and you'll be expected to more or less finish that by the time the skills for probation practice module kicks in around about September. So you need to be enrolling, you need to be looking at the materials, and you need to be starting on that pretty quickly. Again, it should be fairly self-explanatory when you get on the module site what it is that you're expected to do. There'll be some introductory materials, and then it's quite clear. You can click into each of the learning sessions made available to you, and you can start to see how the learning works. So I said earlier that relationships are very important, and just to tell you a little bit about the people who are around the CJL and who you'll have contact with whilst you're training. The most important people really are Aileen Watson as course leader and Kelly Elliott, because they're the ones who organise the programme and will deal with any issues or problems. They're the ones that you'll hear from about all the different practical arrangements when you're coming into the university for face-to-face days. They're the ones that you might talk to about things like learning contracts or extra support that you need. I'm around as well, Anne Robinson. I'm kind of programme leader, So I manage that, but also Aileen, Kelly and I, along with others, are tutors on specific modules. So you'll have a team around each of the modules that you're working with, particularly when it comes to the 15-month PQIP. So you'll meet and you will engage with different people from the module team. We'll all be involved in putting together materials. You'll see all of us doing screencasts and present on. You will also have a specific academic tutor, and the academic tutor is a named person who will support you through the learning. And you might find you need very little support, because what you do is you go to the module tutors here and there for the specific queries that you have about the learning on those modules, and you're quite confident with learning altogether. But if you do feel that there are issues about managing workload, managing the competing demands, you're struggling with reflection, you are finding it difficult with some of the academic skills, your academic tutor is a really good person to start discussions, and your academic tutor may signpost you to other resources and to other people within SHU for support, but that's your real starting point, and we're developing that role to build in more of the study skills support for those of you who need it. And of course your academic tutor is there when personal issues come up, and if you need support of a more pastoral nature, in the first instance your academic tutor will be able to assist with that. And the other person, really, really important to know about, is Lucy Mills. And Lucy Mills is our support officer for the CJL. And it's Lucy who deals with the administrative side of things when it comes to applying for extensions if something happens and you can't meet an assessment deadline, and all the practicalities around learning contracts, disabled student support, and these sorts of things. And Lucy will very often be the one who's contacting you with little bits of information about the programme and about resubmission dates, about some of the practical things around the programme, backing up the course leader and deputy programme leader. So lots of people there that you'll have contact with, and hopefully you'll build some good relationships with the teaching team and with particular individuals within the teaching team. So I think it's important that you have kind of your go-to people, if you like. So it may feel a little scary at first, thinking about dealing with this online learning, and maybe you've been out of academia for a little while, or maybe you've had an academic programme that's been very much based on classroom teaching, and some of the distance learning is new to you, but also some of the reflection and having to apply your learning to real life, as it were. We do hope that we help you bridge and make the adjustment into this learning, which will be a bigger adjustment perhaps for some people than others. We have introductory materials on the module sites and around the Blackboard environment. There are organisation sites which provide the generic information for your particular cohort of learning. So that's where you go for your timetables, for all sorts of bits of information about what's what. And then you go to specific areas for the teaching on your particular subjects. It should be reasonably easy to get started. We provide you with a lot of information, but of course we are here if you need a little bit more support or a little bit of help to get started, because it's not necessarily easy to motivate yourself, particularly if you're faced by the amount of new things you're having to take on. I think particularly for those of you doing the 21-month programme though, it's important to realise that you haven't really got a great deal of time to lose, because you've got quite a lot to pack in. So get going with it quickly. If you have any immediate worries, questions, problems, make sure you get in touch with us and we'll help you to sort them out, or we'll help you to get over those initial apprehensions. It's not too difficult. Don't build up don't build up barriers. It really is about communication. It really is about relationships. And although distance learning, in some senses, might seem like a bit of an isolated experience, it doesn't have to be. That is partly about how you approach it and how we approach it in terms of the opportunities that we make available to you. So all that remains really for me to say is we're really looking forward to working with you. We hope that you're going to do well. We trust that you're going to do well and that you're going to get a lot out of the programme. It's demanding. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It does mean that you have to be able to balance quite a lot of different competing things that are coming at you at any one time. You may need some help and support to enable you to cope with all those demands, but it is doable, and we do what we can to make it manageable and realistic while still having some real proper rigorous academic standards as well. So I will leave it at that. We look forward to seeing you on the modules and to working with you over the coming months. So cheerio.